Hi YouTube, this is Michelle. I just wanted to get back to you about my cardiology consult that I had yesterday. But before I talk about the consult, I first want to talk about how important it is to be your own advocate. Whenever you have any lab tests done or any other tests done, make sure that you actually see a copy of those lab tests, or that someone has actually explained to you, the results of the test and anything that was abnormal in the test. And that seems obvious, but I'm going to give you a couple of examples of things that have happened to me that have to do with that. Once, actually years ago, I had gone to the doctor for, I don't remember why I had gone to the doctor, but during the appointment, the doctor had, decided that he was just going to run some blood tests, and it didn't have anything to do with whatever I was seeing him for. So, when I didn't hear back from the office about the results of the blood tests, I didn't really think anything. I just assumed that everything was normal since I hadn't heard anything. Well, I ended up having to go back to the doctor again, once again for some unrelated reason to the blood test, about 3 or 4 months later. And I decided that I wanted a copy of those blood tests because I wanted to start keeping records of, my lab tests. And so then the doctor was like, oh, lab tests, and he seemed confused. And so he looks through the chart and he glances at it, and he was like, oh, you had anemia. He's like, did I tell you to start iron? And I'm like, no, you didn't tell me that. And he's like he's still staring at the lab test. He's like, your level is really low. Yeah, you're really anemic. You need to start taking iron right now. And so I'm thinking, well, what if I hadn't said anything? Would he have ever noticed the lab test? I mean, I still can't believe that. So, especially when it comes to lab tests, I always make sure that I get a copy of my lab tests. But listen to what happened to me, at the cardiology office, which is similar, but it's not exactly the same thing. Um, First I want to say that, over my blood pressure has always been very low. But over the years, I have noticed that it seemed like has been creeping up a little bit over the years, but nothing really to be worried about. I've noticed at some gynecologist appointments that it has started to get a little high, and I wasn't worried about it because I know that losing weight can lower your blood pressure, and since I was always on a diet and I was always about to lose weight, I just always figured that, if my blood pressure was slightly elevated, I was going to lose weight anyway, and then I wouldn't have to worry about it again. So it actually had been a few years since I had even paid any attention to my blood pressure whatsoever. When I went to my primary care doctor before I started this whole bariatric thing. And so at the beginning of May, I had gone to a new primary care doctor, and she took my blood pressure, as normal, but she didn't tell me what the numbers were. And so I was curious as to how my blood pressure was, and I asked her what was my blood pressure, but for some reason she misunderstood what I said and started talking about something else, and then we never got back to the subject of my blood pressure. So I don't know what my blood pressure was during that appointment, but when I went to the bariatric clinic at the end of May, my first visit, my blood pressure was pretty high. It was, like 145 over 90 something. I don't remember. And, when the surgeon took a look at my numbers, he's like, oh, your blood pressure is high. Do you have high blood pressure? And I'm like, no, I haven't. I don't have high blood pressure. And he was like, okay. And then he just, kept going. So, I thought about it and I'm like, okay, if he was worried about it, he would have said something. So then my next visit to the bariatric, clinic, my blood pressure was even higher than it was before. And this time I said something. I was like, oh, that's high. And the woman who was taking my blood pressure, she was like, yeah, that is pretty high. She's like, but some people, when they're in doctor's offices, their blood pressure is elevated. Which is, I mean, that is true, but I don't really think that I get all that affected by doctor's offices. And so once again, the surgeon didn't say anything about my blood pressure. And, once again, I was distracted, worried about the surgery and everything that I didn't say anything about my blood pressure either. However, then I, went to my cardiology appointment yesterday. And, they did an EKG and he said my EKG was normal. And, but he did say that he thought that he heard just a slight heart murmur, which is really common in a lot of people, and it's not any big deal, but he wants to do an echo just to make sure that there is nothing wrong. But other than that, he thinks that everything is fine and that I'm, okay to do the surgery. So while he was writing all that stuff up in the computer, I was like, well, I have a question for you since you're a cardiologist. At what point do you diagnose someone with high blood pressure? And so he looks at my blood pressure. He's like, yeah, your blood pressure is pretty high. He's like, is that normal for you? And so I told him about my previous blood pressure numbers. And then he was like, oh, well, you have high blood pressure. Let me start you on a low dose of blood pressure medication. And so, I'm just thinking, well, what if I hadn't said anything? He was about to end my appointment. And so if I had never said anything, why didn't he question me about it? I mean, of course, he didn't know what my blood pressure was at the other visits, but my blood pressure was high, so, and I had said that I didn't have high blood pressure on the form. I don't understand why people aren't questioning, people more because, high blood pressure is very serious disease, and so I don't know. I think, doctors, they do a good job of taking your blood pressure, but if they don't do anything with the number, then what's the point? Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. Uh, so actually, I just started taking the blood pressure medication today. I hope that I haven't felt anything yet. Some people, have side effects from their blood pressure medications, and so I just hope that I am fine on this particular blood pressure medication. I'll be following up with the cardiologist in about 6 weeks. He wants to follow up with me to see how I'm doing on the medication and how my blood pressure is doing, and then to talk to me about the results of the echo. So, the next thing that I want to do, I want to do a couple of shout outs. It's not something that I'm going to do all the time, but if someone else does a shout out for me, then I'm going to go ahead and shout them out. So I want to mention Lost Ange Found. I will put a link to her channel in the comment box below. She is a fellow sleever in Phoenix. She just recently had her surgery 4 weeks ago. And she is doing a giveaway when she gets up to 50 subscribers, just like I'm doing a giveaway when I get up to 50 subscribers. So I think the last time I checked, I was at 46 or 47, so I'm getting really, really close. Once I get to 50, I am having a giveaway. So if you're watching me and you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you can help me get up to 50. And then the other shout out is to VSG Jody because, she's just wonderful and, she just does all these shout outs. I don't know how she has time to watch all the YouTube videos she must be watching. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about is in my previous video, Lost Ange Found had put a comment on there about how I got started with running, at my weight. She said that she had that the Couch to 5K was too hard or something like that. And so I do want to talk about that because it is, it's kind of funny to me when I think back on it. Because, okay, so when I had decided that I was interested in trying to start running, because I had never run in my life, and, so I had asked around, and several people had told me, like, oh, Couch to 5K, it's wonderful. Even if you've never been running, you can do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's me. I'm a couch potato, but let me do this. I was so mad. I almost wanted to write the company and say, look, this is too hard for a real couch potato. I mean, there are people that tell me that they're couch potatoes, but I don't know. If you can start, right away and do the first week of C25K, then you must have used to be an athlete or you used to be in shape. I mean, I've never really been in good shape. And so that was hard. And so what I did was when I saw that, the first week was going to be too hard for me, I just didn't even I put aside at first I put aside the couch to 5K. So before I even tried to do the couch to 5K, I made sure that I was already consistently walking on my treadmill for 30 to 45 minutes most days of the week without any problem. So then what I started doing was I would just start running, so I would be walking and then I would just start running and I would run for as long as I could, which in the beginning was like 10 seconds. 15 seconds, really, that was all that I could do. And then I would stop and I would keep walking. And I would do that several times during my walk. Now, when I first started, I could only do it like maybe 2 or 3 times during a 30-minute walk or even a 45-minute walk because it was just so exhausting. And so I just, kept increasing the time that I was doing that. And I was very, easy on myself. I didn't even try to say, every 5 minutes you have to run. No, I just ran whenever I caught my breath, whenever I felt like I could run, that's when I would do it. And then as it started getting easier, I started setting little goals for myself like, okay, today I'm going to walk for 30 minutes and I'm going to run 4 times during my 30-minute walk. But I am not going to make myself do it for any certain length of time. I'm just, at some point, I'm just going to start running and then I am going to stop running when I can't run anymore. So I actually took about 4 or 5 weeks before I was able to run for a minute without stopping. And so then I was able to do the first week of the couch to 5K. It was still very hard for me to complete the first week. And so I just kept doing the first week over and over again until I could finish it. And it took me several weeks to get through the first week. And so then I did the same thing with the second week. I never moved on until I felt very comfortable and until I could do all of the running intervals in that particular week. And, I wasn't in any hurry. And I actually was more focused on my walking. I was walking a lot outside of doing the Couch to 5K because I was training to walk a half marathon. But it took several months for me to get to the point where I could run 1 mile without stopping on the treadmill. But the point was is that I did it. And yeah, I guess that's it. So my advice is you don't have to go at the rate that the program is trying to make you go. If it's too much, start off on your own without the program. And then once you work your way up to being able to run for a minute, then you can start doing the program. Because even once I got up to being able to run for a minute, the program, it's been so long since I've done it, but I think you have to run for a minute maybe 6 times or something the first week. So it's like the first time I tried it, I probably could run for a minute maybe 2 or 3 times. And then the other times I was still so exhausted I hadn't caught my breath by the time it was time for me to run a minute again. And I would just walk through those intervals. And I just kept doing it, 3 days a week until I could consistently do it. So that's my advice for getting started with the Couch to 5K if you are a real couch potato and, if it's, too hard for you. And so, let's see, I'm up to 14 minutes. I am going to stop right now. I do have a few other things that I'm going to say, but I'm going to save that for another video, and I will probably, do another video next week. So I will see you guys then. Bye.